Hi everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to make some sourdough lemon blackberry muffins with a lemon blackberry glaze. Then we're going to do kind of an herby pan-seared chicken with a sun-dried tomato and orzo pasta. So let's start by getting our muffins ready. We're going to start with the liquid base and then we'll add in the rest of it. So we're going to start with a half a cup of sourdough discard. You can use active starter too if that's what you have. We're not really using it for its rising, its leavening properties, but more just so we can get ready to feed it. So we're going to add in a half a cup of sourdough discard. Into our bowl. Just use my spoon to scrape out all of that goodness. And I do have my oven preheating to 400 degrees. Then we're going to add in a fourth a cup of cream. And you want to use, I will say, heavy whipping cream works well, but you could sub out half and half or milk. Maybe just do a smidge less if you're doing milk because it's a bit thinner. So we've got our fourth cup of cream. Now we're going to add in 3/4 cups of sour cream. And I'm just going to eyeball my 3/4 cup for it instead of getting another dish dirty. But this is again for our blackberry lemon muffins. A little bit more, and then we'll be making a nice chicken and orzo pasta. So let's give this a good stir. Right now we've got our cream, our sour cream, and our sourdough discard, and we're just going to give this a good mix up. Try to get all of your kind of lumps out from your sour cream. There we go. And now, once you've kind of got it mixed up well, we're going to add in a half a cup of melted butter, which is the same as 1 stick. Give this a good stir. And then we're going to add in 2 eggs. Once we have it all mixed up. Here we go. So I've got 2 eggs. 1 and 2. And then we're going to give it a good mix. Remember, with our muffins, we can mix it now really well, but once we add on our flour, we've got to kind of minimize our mixing so we have nice fluffy muffins instead of stiff ones. So we'll get this mixed in. And then we are going to add in some fresh lemon zest and some lemon juice. I'm going to grab a knife here so I can cut my lemon after I zest it. So we're going to zest up. We're going to use about half the zest of this lemon because we're going to use some in our glaze as well. So we're going to zest up just about half of it, which will be kind of close to, a tablespoon. And this will give it a really kind of bright flavor to the muffins. We're kind of getting into like all of our good spring and summer flavors right now. When the weather's outside, it's just, you just want refreshing things. And I'm using this as actually a Parmesan grater, and it works great for zesting our lemons. I absolutely love it. Here we go. So we've got about half of our lemon zested in here. And I'm going to cut it in half, and we're going to use half of this juice in our muffin, and then the rest is going to be used for our glaze. Yep. There, got a seed. Make sure there's no more. There we go. So we're going to squeeze this fresh lemon juice in there, and so it's going to give it a nice, refreshing flavor. What's really going to pick up in the baked good is that zest, so that's really important, and you want to use fresh zest because dry, like pre-packaged zest is just not as good. Here we go. Give my hands a little things, and we're going to give this a nice little stir. Kind of mix that lemon juice and that zest in. And then we are going to add in our salt and baking powder and baking soda. So we're going to start with a teaspoon of salt. Two teaspoons of baking powder. 1, 2, and then a half a teaspoon of baking soda. Forgot to grab that one. So let me grab it out of my cabinet right here. And a half a teaspoon of baking soda. And then we're going to stir these in. And what the fun process is that baking soda is going to interact with both the sour cream and the lemon juice, and it's going to make our batter a bit more fluffy, which will give it a nice kind of rise in our muffins along with the eggs. There we go. As you can see, it's growing in size as those chemical reactions are happening, and it's getting really light and fluffy. Perfect. Okay. Now we are going to add in 1 cup of granulated sugar. This is where your sweetness is going to come from. Fill up my cup here. A pinch more. We'll give this a good stir, and then it will be time to add in our flour. And this is where I say it's really critical not to over mix your flour. You want a chunky dough for the muffins. It's going to give you a nice, soft, fluffy muffin. If you over mix it and you like cream it together till it's smooth, your muffin will be like hard like a rock. So we're going to do 2 cups of all-purpose flour. So 1 and 2. And I am just going to gently stir these in until they are just barely incorporated. You might see a few couple bits of dry flour. That is perfectly fine because we'll have to fold in our blackberries.
Did you have a question? How was the birthday dinner last night?
It was excellent. It was really nice. The kids actually loved it. Jack, I was surprised. He's normally our worst behaved at going out to eat, so it's not always fun to go out to eat with him. But he loved the aquarium restaurant and being able to watch the fish and then walk around and see the sea animals. So he loved it. And then Teddy absolutely loved it. He was enthralled the whole time. He's so into ocean animals right now. Okay, so we've got our lumpy batter right now for our muffins. And I've got our blackberries here. We're not going to use all of them. We're going to save a few for our glaze. We're going to mash lemon juice and these up together to make a good glaze. But what you want to do with your blackberries, because they're really big, is you want to cut them in half. And you can cut them smaller if you want to, but this will be so you don't have this huge kind of soggy juice pocket in your muffin. So I just kind of go through, cut them right there. If you have, sometimes with blackberries, they're really big. Those you might have to cut into fourths, but these are smaller. It's not quite blackberry season here, but when you get those really large ones, those you'll have to cut into fourths. Because you just think about it, you don't want anything bigger than like a regular sized blueberry, or it will just get like too kind of soggy. Here we go. And then we're going to gently stir these in or fold them in. You just don't want to make sure you are too rough with them because you don't want to split them up too much when we're doing our good stir in. And so this was a whole, like, I think 8-ounce container of blackberries. So it'll be a good amount in there. And we're going to save probably, you don't need much for the glaze because it's pretty, you're using it more for the color. So we're going to save about maybe 8 smaller blackberries for our glaze that will muddle up. Okay, I'm going to give this a good stir. Kind of gently folding it in by kind of scooping down below and pulling it up. Being careful not to really be too rough with it and not to overmix it. And this again is our blackberry lemon muffins with our sourdough discard. Before we spoon these up, I have my water boiling now for my orzo. So we're going to pour in some of our orzo pops, about I want to say a cup of it. I'm going to use about half this box. It's maybe a little less than a cup. A little bit more. I will say Orzo does poop up a lot, so you don't need a huge amount to get you a good amount with there. And then we're going to give it a quick stir.
You have a question? Any ideas for tonight's meal?
I actually have kind of figured out for tonight's meal, we're going to do some chicken wings and loaded fries and fruit, because I kind of got a busy sports schedule tonight. So we'll be kind of running around everywhere. Okay, we've got our blackberries mixed in there. Let me get my muffin tin. Here we go. I'm almost down and out of all of my crazy leftover liners, and then I can finally buy a new set. Hate to I'm terrible about constantly buying stuff and then having a whole bunch left over. So I was like, my goal was I'm going to use up my huge collection of random cupcake liners. Boy, let's start. We've got some 4th of July ones here. Oh, these are foil too. Perfect. There we go. I love foil. Foil liners are typically my favorite, but I had just this huge random selection of the oddest mixture of them. There we go. I like to spoon my batter in with a metal spoon. I just think it falls off a little bit nicer. We're going to fill them up. I do fill mine up to the very top because I like that big kind of bakery dome on mine. So this will make us 12 muffins and I'll go back through and refill them once we've got them all kind of partially filled. You can always fill them less and then make more, but I do like a big dome on it. That's where you get all that good flavor. And this batter is made with butter, which means it's denser and thicker now, but once that butter melts, it will settle down in there. So they're not going to be like massively over the top because it will thin out as it bakes. So we're going to start going in, giving a nice big spoonful, and then we'll come back and finish it off with our remaining bits. There we go. And I'm making sure I'm getting good blackberry bits in every one. You want to make sure they kind of get dispersed evenly because you don't want to have one that has like 10 blackberries and one that has 2. You want them to try to cook up because if you hit too many blackberries in one, it will be more of a soggy muffin than a full on. It's the same thing with like blueberries or whatnot. But I will say blackberries, like blueberries, hold up really well in muffins, better than I would say strawberries. There we go. Now we're just going to go over and try to make them all equal. If you're going to underfill any of the muffins, the best ones to underfill are these 2 in the middle because they get the least amount of heat, so they take the longest to cook. So underfilling those just by a smidge allows your them all to kind of bake out perfectly. Because you don't want to overbake a muffin. Nobody likes an overbaked muffin. There we go. And I am out of batter here. I've got one last little bit here. Okay. Give my hands a quick rinse. And then we're going to do a quick little brush with some cream and sprinkle sugar over it. Gives you just a really lovely topping, and it makes a nice kind of gold brown on it. You need just about, I want to say, not even a tablespoon of cream, just a smidge. And then you're just going to dab your brush in it and just kind of lightly tap the tops of it. And this is going to help it get a nice golden color. And we'll sprinkle a little bit of sugar on it. Gives it a little bit of a sugar crust, which is lovely on muffins. We're going to do a glaze to go on top of this. But if you didn't want the glaze, they would be just perfect without it. But they get that little extra. There we go. Nice little smattering. And we can even use whatever leftover cream. We'll use that in our glaze in a little bit so we have no waste. Let me grab my little sugar here. And you need less than a tablespoon, just a very little. You don't want to cake it on too much, just a very light thing so it gives it a nice little sweet kind of crunch on the top. But don't go too heavy. If you put it too heavy, it will mess with your rising. There we go. And then we're going to pop these in the oven at 400 for 18 minutes. And they'll bake up, have a nice, lovely dome on them, and then we'll make our glaze to kind of dress them up. So I always like to put them on the top one, and then we're going to set our timer for 18 minutes. There we go. And now we can work on our lunch. I'm going to give my orzo just a quick stir, make sure I have none on the bottom. And then let's get our chicken marinated and we'll start sauteing things up. So I'm going to take our 2 chicken breasts and we are going to cut them in half because like I said, chicken breasts are pretty big nowadays. So a half is a pretty good serving. And it will cook much nicer if you kind of cut it down. That way you don't have to cook it as long to cook it all the way through. And then if you have any bits of fat, just cut those off now because those just won't be as nice. Okay. And now we're going to season up our chicken, let it marinate for a little bit, and we'll sauteing up our veggies.
You have a question? Is that with chicken with lemon orzo?
We're not going to do lemon orzo today. We're actually going to be doing sun-dried tomato and basil pasta. So I know it's a little different. I feel like lemon always goes with orzo, and it's great. I actually have a recipe for a lemon orzo chicken soup on our page. But today we're going to be doing sun-dried tomato. So I gave them a nice covering of Worcestershire sauce. We're going to do a sprinkle of garlic salt. A little bit of paprika. This is going to go well with the sun-dried tomato. Also give it a nice kind of golden color when it cooks up. Sprinkle that over. I'm going to do a little bit of onion powder. There. And then we've got some basil, dried basil. We're going to be using some fresh basil in our pasta, but for sauteing it up, the dried basil will cling nicely to the chicken. There we go. And then a little bit of oregano. I guess this one wasn't open. Here. Does not want to turn on for me. We'll just shake it on then. And then what we're going to do is we're going to flip and we're going to do the exact same on the other side. So I'm going to keep one hand clean. We'll do our flip. It's really important to make sure your chicken has all that delicious flavor. Marinate it both sides, not just one.
Just like when I'm helping kids with math. What you do to one side, you do to the other.
Yes, I was right. It's crazy teaching math and now the Common Core way. And I'm like, why are we confusing kids? Now they're confusing all these methods together. And they're like, oh, I needed to do that to the other side too. And you're like, yes, you do. You can't just add something to a number for no reason. We out of our paprika, we're going to do our basil. And shake. Onion powder. And be careful with this one. And our oregano. There we go. We're going to let that sit and marinate. I'm going to give my hands a quick wash since I was touching up the chicken. There we go. Let's give our orzo a little stir. I said orzo cooks fast, so you don't want to forget about it, otherwise you'll have mushy mush. Let's see. Still needs about a minute or two. Let's put our chicken back here. We're going to let it marinate. We're going to chop up our onion. We're going to let that start to saute in our pan for our delicious pasta.
You have a question? Is oregano a good spice to cook with?
Oh, I love oregano. It is delicious, has a lot of flavor, and it's not so out there that you like, it just blends really well, especially with chicken and fish. I use oregano probably almost every day because I do love it. It's one of my favorite ones. It's just so delicious, but not overly in your face.
You have a comment? I wasn't paying that close attention, but someone said you didn't do Worcestershire on the second side.
You're right, I didn't.
So nice cat.
Nice cat. Messing with me with my math. There you go. This is where when I get talking, I often forget. You know, luckily chicken would be more forgiving. I have done it once where I forgot to add yeast to bread, and then you're stuck with just a flat mound that's awful. You know, it's like when I have to measure out ingredients and someone comes in and talks to me and I'm like, oh no, how many cups did I measure? And then I end up like scooping everything back out and doing it again because it's just, you know, multitasking when people are talking. I'm going to put a little bit in here because this will be for our chicken in a little bit. But I put about a tablespoon of regular olive oil in here. And then I have sun-dried tomatoes. Sun-dried tomatoes are in a seasoned oil. It will be really delicious for our pasta. So I'm going to add a little bit of that in here as well because this is going to be more of like an oil like based pasta. It'll be delicious. And this pasta, it's also really good cold as a pasta salad. So it's like one of those things you can have it hot and then you can have it cold. Those are the best. So we're going to add our onions in. I'm just using a half an onion for this. We'll save the other half for another day. Here we go. Okay, so we're also going to be having spinach in our pasta, fresh basil, and then I've got sun-dried tomato paste and sun-dried tomatoes. So we're going to actually give these sun-dried tomatoes a little chop up. This paste is really great to add a whole nother level of flavor. But I had to get a fork to fish them out. And then we're going to reserve a little bit of our liquid from our orzo for our pasta as well. Let me fish these guys out.
You got a question? How was the dinner last night and how did the cake turn out?
The dinner was excellent. It was nice. It was wonderful. The kids were really well behaved, which is always a win because then it makes it so much more enjoyable. And the cake turned out awesome, amazing. It was delicious. I managed to create a cool squid, but we will be posting a short of that and then a video of the whole cake making process later, so you'll be able to check it out. But it turned out really well, especially because I hadn't done some fondant creatures in a while. But I do love making cakes and like fun cakes. And I say, I think they're pretty good for a amateur artist in the sculpting that I do. I'm no great, you know, Michelangelo here, but I thought I created a pretty cool squid last night. So I'll be excited to show you guys in a little bit. I'm going to mince up my sun-dried tomatoes here. I will tell you, a little bit of sun-dried tomatoes long way. They're really packed with flavor, so don't feel like you have a huge amount of full flavor. Okay. Give these a nice little stir. I'm going to turn it to about a 6 now. And then I'm going to check my orzo because I think we're ready and I need to reserve some of this liquid. Perfect. So let me grab a little Pyrex container and a ladle. And we're going to use some of this liquid in our pasta. And then we'll strain the rest. It's fine if a couple of noodles get in there because it's all going to get put together. There we go. See, those noodles all want to come. All right. So we got about a half a cup. Because again, this is about a smaller batch of this. Let me turn off my back burner. And then I'm going to strain my orzo. And you want to give it a really good shake because you don't want it to hold in a lot of water or it'll get mushy. We'll let it sit and strain over there. But you see how a little bit of orzo really balloons up. So you don't need as much as people think. It balloons up much more than rice does. Okay. Got our onion sauteing here. We're going to add a little bit of garlic to this. And then I'm going to start turning on my chicken oil so we can have that start sauteing as well. But I want it to come nice and hot first. So let's grab our garlic and we'll add in about, I would say about a teaspoon. And if you're using fresh, that's about 2 to 3 cloves of it. But I always say that garlic is a pretty good substitute where you don't have to do all that work. I love fresh garlic, but man, it's a lot of work to peel and to chop and to mince for such a small product. It's like shallots. Love shallots too, but that's a lot of work for a little bit of onion. There we go. Give this a nice stir. Just watch your garlic because it will burn really quickly if you're not paying attention. But here we're going to make the base, and this is going to be for our sun-dried tomato pasta with orzo. And then we're going to saute up our chicken here in just a second. There we go. I'm going to turn it down to about a 5. Let it saute it just a little bit longer. And then we're going to add in our sun-dried tomatoes and let them start kind of crisping up and letting out their nice, really rich flavor. There we go. And like I said, a little goes a long way. There's a lot of flavor in sun-dried tomato. So we're going to let it saute up. Just give it a good stir. And we're going to let those kind of flavors marry while we chop up some fresh basil. So I planted. So, I got my garden planting. We got my basil planted. And then we were playing out this morning. And all of a sudden I look over and Jack is sitting in my garden bed, picking off all the leaves of one of my basil plants. He was just having a blast there. And I was like, no. And it was no salvaging it. I'm like, there was like one little nub left. And I'm like, well, we'll plant that nub and maybe it will regrow. And then I took my other really sad basil plant out of there. And I'm like, we're going to transplant it. Maybe I can bring it back to life. Give it a good life outside in the garden. Although with Jack out there, I don't know how good of a life that will be. But luckily it was just one basil plant and not the tomato plants or those things. Basil I can, replace fairly easy, but I don't want to have to replant the tomatoes or whatnot. But I was like, I looked for 1 second and in the garden boxes, just sitting there smack dab in the middle on top of like 3 plants, just dumping dirt on his head, having the time of his life. So I get. Teddy was like, help me. I was helping Teddy find some worms. He's very big into worms. And so we have to go and flip over all the pavers and find him worms until he has a nice collection. Okay, let's give this a nice stir. And now our chicken, it's got a nice boil here. We'll do our drip test, see if it's hot enough. Perfect. Nice little sizzle. Let me grab some tongs. We're going to put our chicken in. I'm going to turn it down to about a 5 now, so I'm medium. But I like my oil to get nice and hot first. And we're going to sear up our chicken. There we go. We'll do 2 at a time. And then we'll transfer them here. So we've got our chicken with our basil, oregano, Worcestershire, paprika, onion powder in there. And now I'm stirring our onions and our sun-dried tomatoes. We're going to add in our fresh basil and some spinach. So we've got about 1/4 of a cup of chopped up fresh basil, which pairs really well with the sun-dried tomato. It will be absolutely lovely. Let's get that. Nice stir. We're going to let it kind of 30 seconds before we start the spinach, just so it gets a little up on it. because the spinach has liquid into it. And so when we add it, it will, the veggie, like the sun-dried tomatoes and basil won't be able to crisp as much because it will sweat out a bit too much. Okay.
You have a question about Orzo? Does it resemble rice and taste and texture?
You know, but texture, I will say it looks a lot like it is softer than rice, and taste wise, it tastes more like a noodle than actual rice. It's very mild, so whatever you put it on, it really like taste wise, it tastes more like a noodle than actual rice. It's very mild, so whatever you put it on, it really like collects some, you know, other than the look at it, it's not really much like rice at all. There we go. But it is great, like a great pasta salad in there, and soup, it works well. It works better in soup than I say rice, because rice I find really just keeps soaking up and then it gets so fluffy in the soup. But Orzo is actually pretty lovely in a soup. Okay, let's get our last little bit. This is about 3 cups of fresh spinach. And then we're going to give it a quick little toss here. And we don't need to cook it all the way, because when we add in the stuff, we'll cook it a bit more. And there we go. But now we're going to add in a little bit of our pasta liquid. This is about a half a cup. There's a couple noodles in there, but that's no biggie. And then I have my sun-dried tomato pesto. And we're going to add in about a spoonful of that as well, which is really just sun-dried tomatoes that are like pureed up, but they'll be absolutely lovely. We're just going to give that a nice kind of toss. There. It's going to be gorgeous. And then I think our chicken is ready to flip over. We've got a nice, lovely kind of crispy sear on it. We'll let it cook through. And then I'm going to add a pinch of garlic salt to our pasta over here. And then we're going to give it a good toss with our orzo. So I'm going to turn it down really, really low. And we're going to add this in here. And really kind of coat everything together. Let me move this out of the way. And then really coat that orzo in all of those nice kind of seasonings, the oil, the sun-dried tomato paste, spinach, that fresh basil in there. We'll mix it up. This is just, it's delicious hot, and it is delicious cold. It makes a great kind of pasta salad the next day too. Here you go. And you could always even throw in like, you know, feta cheese the next day for a pasta salad twist on it. I'm going to put some fresh Parmesan on it in just a second. So let's give this a nice stir, and then I'm going to see if we need to add any more spices. Delicious. It has that, like, you can taste the fresh basil in there, undertones with the pesto, or the sun-dried tomato pesto. It is lovely. So I'm going to turn this, we're going to let it sit, and I'm going to sprinkle some Parmesan cheese over the top of it. I'm not going to mix it in yet, because I like to let it sit and kind of steam a bit on the top first. There we go. So we're going to let that sit and steam on the top. And our muffins are calling us, so we're going to go grab those out of the oven. I'll grab a trivet for these. Oh, beautiful. So we've got a nice firm top on each one. There we go. These are our blackberry muffins with some lemon zest in them. They're going to be absolutely delicious, and we're going to make a lovely blackberry lemon glaze here in just a second. Let me get my trivet out. I'll put them right on here to rest. But again, we made our blackberry muffins with some fresh lemon zest, fresh blackberries, and our sourdough discard. So they just have that really bright, happy spring flavor that, you know, the tartness, all of it works out really well together. Let me pull off this set of chicken and put our next one on. Let me grab a set of tongs here. So we've just got a nice, lovely, crispy sear on both sides of our chicken. And this is kind of our herby crusted chicken. And then we're going to put our second ones in, and then we're going to make our lovely glaze for our blackberry muffins. Here we go. Slide this out of the way. Let's clear a little space over here. Put my pasta. And then let me grab my powdered sugar. There we go. So for our blackberry glaze, so it's going to be a lemon blackberry glaze. We've got our blackberries right here. We can throw them in there. You don't need many because mainly this is going to be for a little bit of flavor, but a lot of really pretty purple colors. You're going to take your fork and you're going to really smash them and to kind of muddle them to bring out that natural juice in there. There you go. So we're just going to muddle them up with our fork. Try to break them apart. You'll have some seeds in your things, but you really won't notice them. There we go. And then we're going to take and add some more of our lemon zest. It'll be really, really lovely in there. I love the fresh lemon juice, but the lemon zest adds just a bit more of a zing to it. So we're just going to zest up just a pinch. And then we're going to add in our fresh lemon juice. There we go. We're going to give this a nice little stir. So you see we have this just really rich, beautiful kind of purple. And then we're going to start by adding in 1 cup of our powdered sugar. We're going to give it a good stir. And then we're going to add in a little bit of cream. So that cream will kind of cut down on the sharpness of the lemon, give it a little bit more of a sweeter flavor, and mellow it out just a little bit. And we have some of our cream left over from when we kind of brushed the top of it. So this is about 1.5 teaspoons. We're going to add that in there. There we go. And we'll mix this up using our fork. This is going to be our lovely, has such a beautiful color from it, from our blackberries. Just gorgeous. Let this sit. I'm going to flip my chicken now because it looks like it is ready to be flipped. There we go. Beautiful. Got this nice, lovely, crispy brown edges on it. We'll be ready to plate up in just a second. You can see our cheese. I have it on really low over here. It's melting lovely, just on a really low temperature. I'm going to add in a pinch more powdered sugar because we want to get what I consider the consistency should be like Elmer's glue, just a nice thickness that we can then drizzle over the top of muffins.
Instead of cream.
Yeah, you could use milk instead of cream. It won't be as rich, and you'll probably want to use a little bit less because milk is a lot thinner, but it would work as well. I find a little bit of cream allows you to kind of cut through the sharpness of like the lemon in there, still getting it, but not quite as sharp, and gives you a nice thicker consistency. But milk would do it. You'll just need to use a little bit less. We're getting there. Just want it a little bit thicker, so we're going to do another maybe third cup more. We'll mix it in, and then it should be just about right. I always say with my glazes, I always mix it until I get the right texture, not necessarily following exact measurement amounts. It's more of a visual look. So if it pours like Elmer's glue or like molasses, that's what you want. That's going to be your golden texture. So it's a nice kind of slower drizzle. Beautiful. So this is what we're looking for, is a just lovely kind of slower drizzle. And then we're going to drizzle it over our muffins. And this is just going to give it a nice lemony blackberry thing, as well as just a really pretty visual. And if you really want to be all bougie, you can go and put it in a piping bag or a Ziploc baggie and cut it, but it's a little nice drizzle. You don't need to go crazy and completely coat it. You want to do it while it's hot so it runs down and runs off of it instead of staying on it in a big glob. So I always do it within like the first few minutes of it popping out of the oven, so it kind of drizzles nicely and then firms up once it cools. But again, this is just going to give you this really just pretty look to it. There we go. And then our chicken will be ready in just a second, and we will plate up lunch. Beautiful. And I'm sure when Teddy wakes up from nap, he's going to come out here and he's going to just lick all of this glaze off. It's his favorite. Okay. Our chicken. Perfect. Nice and golden on both sides. So here is our pan roasted chicken that we have sauteed up in our lovely herbs. And now I'm going to serve up lunch today. So we have our orzo. Now I'm going to give it, you know how we had the cheese melting on top? Now I'm going to stir it in nicely. It'll give it a lovely kind of rich, creamy flavor with that cheese. Scoop this up in here. And then we will serve it with one of our herb roasted chicken breasts on the top. And then, of course, I always love to garnish it with a little bit of Parmesan cheese on top of the chicken. They're all nice and hot, and it will melt all together, and it'll be just delicious. Quick, easy dinner or lunch that you can make in like 30 minutes or so. Plus, we have our awesome sourdough muffins.
You have a question? Where can someone find the recipe if they're just joining?
If you're just joining, we do upload our videos onto the link on our page, so that will be the best way to find our recipes. You can just watch along and cook along with it. I occasionally get out some recipe cards here and there, but the best way is just to rewatch it. And we have those up within an hour or so. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. We had a lot of fun making our blackberry lemon sourdough muffins with a blackberry lemon glaze. Then we cooked up our pasta, our orzo pasta with sun-dried tomatoes and spinach, and our herb pan-fried chicken. But again, don't forget to like and subscribe. We do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. And then we do also offer a membership that does give you more recipe cards, like exclusive videos, and then also just more about our family in general. So again, thank you guys for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe.